What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Claudia Bellafato here holding it down at the DraftKings studio in Boston as they had to separate us all because HR said if I hit my dad on the couch one more time, they are going to start to have conversations. So in the meantime, now that the violence is over, we've got a great show for you still this Monday morning here. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern here on the DraftKings Network. Of course, you can catch the best of GoJo and Golic noon to 1 p.m. Eastern, wherever you hear VSiN on the radio as well. Busy weekend coming off the draft. A lot of interesting NBA action. Claudia, who and what do we have coming up today?
We got a lot, and I do have to say it's much quieter in here. Feels strange, but yeah, we miss you guys. Busy weekend, which means busy show here on this Monday. Coming up next in line, the changing of the guard in the NBA. And why former wide receiver Harry Douglas will talk to us about what Falcons were doing at number 8. And Rap Reaction insider Ian Rapoport will join us in hour 2. But we have to talk about the man that is on the board in Ant Edwards, dropping 40 to help the T-Wolves take down KD and the Suns. And was this the team that was supposed to be that special team, that power team? Can KD do it? Apparently he can't. Or is it just because Ant Edwards is that good? I'm so lost on this series.
It's fascinating. I think this series, Dad, Claudia, is the perfect microcosm of where we're at with the NBA in general right now going into this playoffs, because this NBA playoffs feels like a transition period where we just watched Steph Curry lose in the play-in. We're watching LeBron James holding on for dear life against the Denver Nuggets, avoiding the sweep narrowly in a series that already seems decided. And now Kevin Durant, one of the same guys in that weight class over the last decade plus of our NBA watching, just got swept in the first round of the postseason on a team that was supposed to be another recombination of one of those super teams that we had seen so in vogue over these years, Dad. And as we're watching all of these vestiges of the NBA we thought we knew holding on, we're seeing, as we look for who's next always, because that's how we operate, Anthony Edwards seems very happy to step up and raise his hand because last night was electric from that dude.
Oh, I mean, without question, what he is doing, and you know, when Karl Anthony Towns had gone out, you're like, okay, who's going to pick up the slack? Anthony Edwards had already been playing well. He is a guy who has steadily increased. This is fourth year, rookie year, 19 a game, then 21, then 24, now 25 a game. All-star teams the last couple of years, so he is really growing. And he really took center stage. When Karl Anthony Towns went out, we thought it's the same thing that happened in Minnesota that happened in Philadelphia when Embiid went down, dropping from 3 to 8. And Minnesota hung in there until the last game, you know, fighting for that number 1 slot, which eventually we got Oklahoma City. They're number 3, but it was a 3-team race. So what he has done in putting himself out there with the young players like SGA in Oklahoma City, or guys that we're starting to get to know a little bit more. Even Jalen Brunson, right now, Jalen Brunson's been around a little longer. He's been around for about 6 years or 6-7 years. But what he's doing as well, you're not hearing the names we're normally used to hearing right now.
No, and Dad, I think that's a great call because as we do look around, this was not the only banner performance from the weekend. Jalen Brunson, who kind of with the trajectory you mentioned there, some parallels. It's not perfect apples to apples because so much of Steph Curry's early career was marred by ankle injuries, those things that slowed him down, but took a little while to find this point. And now Jalen Brunson looks like the best bargain in the NBA with the contract that the Knicks got him on there. I will be curious, though, at GoJo and Golic on Twitter. Has the what a pro wants, what a pro needs AT&T commercial made you less likely to root for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the Oklahoma City Thunder? Because, Dad, that was the only headline bigger than anything on the court that I saw over this weekend watching basketball was people seeing this commercial and going into a blind rage. Does it bother you the same way it bothers the internet?
No. I mean, listen, these guys get to get in front of the camera and do their thing, and sometimes you laugh and smile, and sometimes you cringe, at what goes on. But, listen, he's getting his face out there now, and he deserves it. He's right in the thick of the MVP race this year. But, listen, every now and then that's going to happen to you.
Tone deaf.
I want to know how much money AT&T spent because it seems like that is the only commercial, Claudia, that's allowed to run during the postseason.
Yes, and I don't understand how have they ever sung before? I listened to that several times, and every time I look, stunned. How are they that
bad? Are they doing that on purpose? Maybe they have good voices, and as part of the commercial, they're doing that on purpose.
No.
Here's my thing is I don't care that they have poor voices. Like it's part of the bit they build into the commercial. You hear SGA make the joke at the end about that to Chet Holmgren, who's his counterpart in the commercial. I think this is like anything where you could have a good song. Like the more I look back, my 7th grade year, the most hated song in our 7th grade class yearbook was The Reason by Hoobastank. And it's because it got played on the radio way too much for a song that sad. And for this, I can appreciate, now I don't understand how it works in or necessarily is relevant to AT&T. Like I think I sort of get the gist of it, but it seems like a stretch. But the two of these guys having a bro moment, singing back and forth, that's cool for me. Their voices being bad is fine. This just seems like an overexposure problem where, again, I look back and I say, you know what? The Reason, not actually that bad of a song when not ingested in mass quantities like I bought it at Costco, Claudia.
Well, it's like the Whopper commercial. That's all we sang during the NFL season. I felt that was the only commercial that they played every Sunday. So BK did their thing.
It is. Yeah, it is true. They do that occasionally with commercials, obviously, who pay the money to be out there. But, hey, those guys aren't used to getting the FaceTime they're getting. So good on them. I'm still not throwing out the possible fact that they may have sang off key on purpose for the commercial.
It's bad enough, I believe.
Well, now I have a bigger NBA commercial conspiracy theory now because I saw this weekend as well that there was a commercial for Despicable Me 4 featuring none other than Nikola Jokic, who last time we documented wore the outfit that looked like Gru that everyone was comping him to. And, Dad, commercials take a little while to get done. And so now this commercial conveniently popping up in the NBA postseason after this happened here, I'm starting to think that outfit was a plant. That was just mass 100%. Media and corporate America getting their claws into this sweet Serbian superstar and convincing him to go out here and do this because none of us would ever think Nikola Jokic, this man who hates attention, seems to hate basketball at certain times, just wants to go race horses, would be involved in this sort of commercialism. But I think that's exactly what's afoot.
Yeah, listen. Every company, including the marketing companies, they need employees who are playing chess, not checkers, okay? That's what you're getting. People thinking ahead, people being smart and having the long game going on here.
I just love of any company, it's the Despicable Me movie that he's going to be promoting.
Marketing.
You know what? Somehow that is very fitting for Nikola Jokic, though, that would be the ad campaign, even though he's all over the place, too. So we'll have plenty more time to get into what happened in the NBA last night, because I do think it is a very interesting changing of the guard that we're potentially watch happening. And also just the situation in Philadelphia last night in general. Dad, is someone that spent the lion's share of your pro career playing in that city. The game is one thing, and there's a lot to take in on that, but the fact that the Wells Fargo Arena essentially became Madison Square Garden in a game that the 76ers lost to go down 3-1 is a very, very surprising thing considering that fan base. But speaking of fan bases, the NFL draft, hopefully Harry Douglas joining us here in a couple of minutes, talk about it. Harry spent the majority of his career with the Atlanta Falcons, and they're certainly the headliner coming off this weekend. But Dad, Detroit setting all kinds of records in terms of draft attendance overall. We got through the final rounds over the weekend after we went off air on Friday, and top to bottom, do just want to say congrats to them. I mean, this is a city that had to wander through obscurity for so long. Dan Orlovsky, who we got to work with at ESPN for so long, was kind of the poster of what had gone on in Detroit, running out of the back of the end zone, the futility of that franchise, the defeated season, all these things that are now seemingly left in the distance because Dan Campbell and company have helped exercise the demons in here, and that celebration of that culture change on full display this weekend.
Oh, it was great. I mean, as I've said, it's one of the best ideas the NFL has had, is making the draft a traveling show. I know there was the thoughts as of late of doing that with the combine, but I don't think that's going to happen. But with the draft, it's been great. How about next year's in Green Bay? I mean, so it is, unless you get an unseasonably snowing day, which is certainly a possibility, that's just another great place for it. But you're right. Congrats to Detroit, man. They are the rising team in the NFL on the field, and they showed out extremely well off the field.
Let me just say, with Green Bay, as someone who played my final football game ever was the fourth preseason game for the New Orleans Saints in 2015 at Lambeau, and they packed that thing in to watch me and the future Enterprise rental car salesman all go out there and try and put it on tape one more time for everybody. So if they're going to shut down the town for that, I can only imagine what they're going to do as the NFC North continues to get cracks at the NFL draft here. For more on the NFL draft, pumped to bring in our buddy Harry Douglas, former NFL wide receiver, co-host of Freddie and Harry on ESPN Radio, which is an incredible show that you guys need to check out. And this past weekend, also a part of ESPN's digital coverage of the NFL draft, too. So, Harry, how you feeling, man? Long weekend for you guys at the desk.
GoJo, I'm feeling good, man. It's always a fun event to be able to do. A lot of studying has to be put into it, so you don't get on camera, you don't air looking silly like you don't know your information. But all in all, it was a great time. It was fun, and especially for those young men being able to change their lives forever, entering a new chapter in their lives as well.
Do you remember yours? You were, a third rounder, I think 84th pick overall. Do you remember your draft day and what went on?
Of course I do. I had my draft party at Hooters. How in the hell could I not remember it?
No way. A big fan of the wings, I'm sure.
The only regret I have is that I literally have no photos of when I got drafted and my draft party. But that was back in 2008. You know, these camera phones and cell phones and everyone with their heads down wasn't a big thing back then in 2008.
That was true. We were still chirping to talk, I think, at that point. Big Boost Mobile energy back in the day in 2008 for all of us there. So, and Harry, you obviously went through your Hooters draft party and then wound up having a great career that included a long stop with the Atlanta Falcons in there. And I'm curious for you, the Falcons, the big story coming off the weekend. I'm sure your phone has been melting of people reaching out to you as someone who's called that organization home for a long time. What did you make of the Michael Penix Jr. pick and the way that they went about their draft strategy?
So, GoJo, first, let me say this. From the moment the Atlanta Falcons made the pick, all the way until the next day when I was on air, and I made everybody wait too, everyone wanted to know what I thought about the pick. Was I upset? Was I mad? And I will say this. I am not upset about the pick. Now, would I have preferred a defensive player right there at number 8? Yes. But I love that the Atlanta Falcons were thinking about the future. And here's why I think that was very smart by them. The last 2 seasons, they had an opportunity to win the division and make the playoffs. But the quarterback position was the reason why they did not. And when Matt Ryan left, it was not a succession plan in place. And that really kind of bit the Atlanta Falcons as an organization. So what Arthur Blank, Terry Fontenot, and Raheem Morris said is that we're not going to allow this to happen again. Plus, before the draft, I thought the Atlanta Falcons had a major opportunity to win a division. So if you're going to win a division, you're never going to be in a position to be able to pick a quarterback of your choice of your liking, because you're probably going to be picking in the 20s, right? From here on out with Kirk Cousins. That's another reason why you went out and got him. So you guys could win a division and get over that hump and not let that position string hold you and put you in handcuffs. Now, everyone is acting like the Atlanta Falcons didn't, with their second and third round pick two guys that can instantly come and help their football team with Rook Ahorohoro. I think I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, but also Braylon Trice. I covered him a lot at Washington, and he was their best defensive player, making impact plays after impact plays. I called the semifinals game versus Texas, and he was a dominant force. He was all over the field, left and right, being able to, play up to his capabilities. But 5 of their 8 draft picks was on the defensive side of the ball. So I really like the approach that the Atlanta Falcons had. At first, I was like, why is this? But then again, when you look at Michael Penix Jr., who was one of my favorite players in this draft, I think the most natural thrower of the football, I look at Kirk Cousins and I say, okay, Kirk Cousins is going to be here for about 2, possibly 3 years. But then within that offensive system, it normally takes 2 years for the quarterback to really get acclimated to it and understand exactly what the offensive coordinator and the precipice of the offense is trying to do. So now you have a guy in Michael Penix Jr. who's going to be able to learn and not be thrusted into things, but then hit the ground running when he finally does take over.
My thought, Harry, on that was kind of twofold, because I have said, and I've said it for a while now, I think Penix will end up being one of the better, if not best, quarterbacks of this draft. I love the way the kid throws the ball. The other side is where we spent some time, is in a locker room. The players in that locker room, I would imagine right out of the gate, they were a bit disappointed, saying, listen, this is a year-to-year thing. We don't know how many years we got in this thing, and we got a number 1 pick, a high pick. We need to grab somebody that can give to the team right now, because, hell, some of the guys don't even know if they'll be on the team next year, and you'd had a chance this year to win. So I think that the players in the locker room get a little bit bummed by that.
To a certain extent, though, because like I just mentioned, I believe the Falcons were going to win the division before they picked number 8 overall. So now if you start to break it down, you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to look at every player that was in the draft on the board at that point. And when I look at the NFC as a whole, when you have Detroit, Green Bay, you have San Francisco, you have Philly, you have to ask yourself, the Rams, with this number 8 pick, is that pick going to leap our organization to the best in the NFC for it? And if we're being, realistic with the situation, no, it's not. But at the same time, it's not like they got in the second and third round guys who are going to take time to be able to get acclimated. They picked 2 defensive players that are going to have an impact on this football team right away. So that's why I was more so okay with that 8th overall pick. On top of Michael Penix Jr., man, is a gunslinger. GoJo, we did a few of his games, and we were able to witness that in person. Michael Penix Jr. is a different human being. And just the way he throws the football and the offensive weapons that they have, I think when he steps in and takes over, he's going to be able to just hit the ground running versus waiting.
Dad mentioned that locker room dynamic. Harry, you obviously enjoyed a lot of stability with Matt Ryan at the quarterback position and what he brought to that franchise. We just saw his retirement. Kirk Cousins, we saw the headline over the weekend, didn't really get the heads up on this. He's new coming in there, not even the guy that had been positioned as the starter there for some time. Is this something as a veteran player, whether it was at your position or especially at quarterback, knowing the dynamic there, that you do worry about having any effect that lingers beyond this point?
Well, you have to consider it, right? You have to think, okay, is this going to mess up our organization? Is our starting quarterback going to feel disgruntled? But at the end of the day, both of you guys know, right? This is a business, and you're there to do a job, and you're getting compensated to do it as well. And if I'm Kirk Cousins, I just say, well, hell, I'm going to go out here and ball out, and I'm not going to let the young buck on the football field. That's the best way you stop any nonsense, is go out there, do your job to the best of your abilities, and make plays. And you were brought into the Atlanta Falcons organization because they needed someone to unlock the young players that they drafted previously in the top 10 within the first round. Well, you can be that engine for those young guys. So if you're balling out and doing what you're supposed to do, the rest would take care of itself if you're Kirk Cousins.
Could be a Green Bay Packers situation as far as letting the quarterback wait. Harry, only about a minute to go. Draft overall, is there a team that you really thought, you know what, they got exactly what they needed?
It was three teams for me. Number one, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it started last year when they drafted Broderick Jones. We've been able to get Troy Fatanu. They got, I think, Frazier from West Virginia, a center,
Yes.
and then Roman Wilson. And then they got Peyton Wilson. So guys that really can make an impact right now. I know their offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith, very intentional on winning the line of scrimmage. And we all know what their defense brings. But the Philadelphia Eagles, getting two secondary guys, when you look at Quinyon Mitchell, who I had number one on my board, but also Cooper DeJean and who else did they get? God, Will Shipley in the backfield. They got Jeremiah Trotter Jr. at the linebacker position. So they were very intentional on their secondary because they gave up a lot of touchdowns last year, second to the Washington Commanders. And the third team is the Washington Commanders. I thought they did a great job. Mike Sainristil is one of my favorite players in this draft. Had a chance to meet his mother and him up in Detroit this past weekend. So really looking forward to the Washington Commanders. And don't be surprised if they make the leap that we've seen the Washington Commanders do last year, getting their quarterback.
Exciting stuff for a lot of teams coming off draft weekend, no doubt. For more of this great info, make sure you guys check out Freddie and Harry on ESPN Radio. Awesome stuff with Harry Douglas and Freddie Coleman. HD, we appreciate the time as always, brother. Have a good one.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Harry.
GoJo and Golic to talk more about Anthony Edwards because it would be wrong not to. Yes, we told you they swept the Suns. It's also a cool storyline, guys. We've been talking about the fact that he has always said that Kevin Durant is sort of an idol to him. Well, Anthony Edwards just knocked out his idol and dropped 40 in the process. Here's what KD had to say about the budding star.
So impressed with Ant. So impressed with Ant. My favorite player to watch. Just grown so much since he came into the league at 22. Just his love for the game just shines bright, and that's something that's one of the reasons why I like him the most, because he just loves basketball. He's grateful to be in this position. He's taking advantage of every opportunity he's gotten. love everything about Ant, everything, and be watching him going forward. And you know he's going to go out there and play extremely hard every single night. But was really impressed with him, and it's going to be somebody I'm following for the rest of his career.
And see, I say budding, but he really is already established. It sort of goes back to what you were saying, Senior, about Jalen Brunson. It's just names we haven't been saying as much as KD and the LeBrons and the Steph Currys of the world. But times are changing, Senior, aren't they?
Oh, they absolutely are. But this is what happens in sports. And what you look to do is, can you make everybody wants to make a seamless change, right? One of the biggest places that we haven't seen it at all is in golf, right? We had Tiger Woods and we kept wanting the next Tiger Woods, or we wanted to go into the next great players. And we certainly have some great players, but nothing like that. And whether you have dynasties as far as teams or Hall of Fame as far as players, you want there to be a transition. And I had remembered for a few years back, couple of years, we were saying, that we liked kind of the youth going on in the NBA. And I think, Mike, we can say that more and more. I mean, we've mentioned, SGA and Ant-Man and Brunson, though Brunson's been around for a little bit, but Chet Holmgren and Wemby. I mean, there's a number of young players who are coming in and really, really putting a stamp on their career early on, as we're watching the guys we've watched for a decade and a half or 2 decades listen, in reality, their time is coming up.
Oh yeah, they're wrapping up. I mean, and Kevin Durant last night, him and Devin Booker basically on an island trying to save that team on their own here. Bradley Beal was nowhere to be found, despite saying that he'll be damned if he gets swept, and he's never been swept before in his life. Yeah. And now damn, it happened, and it happened with Bradley Beal fouling out there, and it raises a lot of questions about their future. Certainly, Dad, Kevin Durant's future. I saw Shea Serrano tweeted it, and I thought he was spot on. Usually having Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Steph Curry on your team meant you were going to win at least an opening round series. They alone were good enough to make that happen, and that's no longer the case. And for Ant, I think the reason that he's so beloved, not only by other players there, you saw the respect from Kevin Durant, but people around, his game is really aesthetically pleasing, right? Incredible athlete who's managed to harness this also into whatever you call it, juice factor, having that dog in you. When the moments get tough, in a day and age where we're in LeBron's NBA, where making the right play at the end of the game is in vogue and making the proper basketball decisions is something we are a lot more willing to accept. Anthony Edwards has that throwback in him of, no, when things get tough, I want the ball in my hands because I believe I'm the guy that can make that happen. And more often than not, he is. And so when you combine that sort of slashing, high-rising elite mentality that he brings offensively with the aesthetics of that as well, a guy who feels like a bit of a throwback player, I do think that there's a market and an appetite for that from the fan base that's ready to open up and get fed. Yeah, listen, and they're not going anywhere, right? In the team they've built there, and Edwards has stepped up. As I said earlier, it's been a steady rise. 25 points a game this year, 24 last year, made the couple of last All-Star games. So that name is getting out there for sure. But one of the cool things about this one too, Mike, is the fact that he literally was playing against the player that he believes is the greatest to ever play. The guy he wanted to be, the guy he watched, the guy who was a star to him, and Kevin Durant. And man, did he put on a show. I don't think you get a lot of opportunity to do that, right? If you grow up a little bit watching someone that you are that you're like, wow, and then you end up playing against them. It certainly happened before. But to be able to play directly against them, shoot a basketball directly over his outreached hands and score the way you did and play the way you did, got to be pretty wild for him. It had to be an incredible moment there now for him to send them packing in the first round in that way. And that was the other thing in the context of this closeout game, to go out here and have 40 in a closeout game, that kind of emphatic dunk at the end to be the sealing note on sending your hero home is all the kind of stuff that builds lore. Like the place we're at right now with these young players you mentioned, Dad, is they just don't have enough built up lore for us to necessarily know how to feel in all these moments in the postseason. They haven't gotten to the level of accomplishment yet of the guys that were graduating out of the league for us to be as invested off the jump for the casual fan around the league. But we're going to get there quickly with them. For the Suns, I have no idea what happens for this team now. Like they're pretty locked into this core for the time being. Everyone pointing out, oh yeah, the Suns have no depth. Why do we think that is? Because they had to mortgage all of that and every future draft pick they had to create the current core of this roster that couldn't stay on the court together healthy during the season, because that's what happens with older players at this point in their career. And now you've got Frank Vogel out here saying, oh, he's got Matt Ishbia's support. He'll be back, which, Dad, I don't know how much changing that would really do anything at this point, given what ails this team. So Phoenix is in a really unenviable position going forward of having an old roster that I think is trying to work off a dated model of those microwave super teams.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, they built it for this year, really, of what the moves they made in the offseason, and it didn't come to fruition. And we're finding this out now, too, about Kevin Durant, aren't we? You know, with Oklahoma. It still blows my mind. Remember, Oklahoma City, Westbrook, and Harden were all together there between there and then Golden State and Brooklyn and now here in Phoenix. He did get the title in Golden State, but trying to build those super teams in other spots just has not happened for him.
Tell you the other thing that didn't go well last night, about the only thing that didn't go well for the Timberwolves, who now get to move on, is scary moment for their head coach, Chris Finch, who on the sideline collided with Mike Conley Jr., who was over running out of bounds, and it looked like they hit knee to knee. And at first, didn't look like an overly violent collision. No. Like, Dad, in terms of friendly fire, I saw one of the ultimate ones up close and personal. My head coach, Charlie Weiss at Notre Dame, got sawed off on the sideline by one of our defensive ends who got thrown out of bounds and ended up really tearing up his knee, having a ton of issues with that. And this looked a lot less violent than that, obviously, basketball to football. Yeah. But he rolls up into him, play stops for a few moments there. He needs help walking off the court and unfortunately cannot finish the game. Deeply unhinged tweet from one Draymond Green saying, you got to finish the game, coach, there. Draymond going, rub some dirt on it, Dad, in a way that I'm sure warmed your heart. But I want to get this sound in because Micah Nori took over for the remainder of the game, one of the assistants on the Timberwolves bench, and he is well known, especially around their Bally Sports local coverage, for giving halftime interviews going into this one. And if this is any indication, it is no wonder why they didn't miss a beat down the stretch of this game.
Nothing, fast break points, boom goes the dynamite, there goes our lead. We got to treat Bane like you do the elf on a shelf on Christmas morning. You got to find him. He makes everybody comfortable. He's like popcorn during Saturday night movies. Our paint defense was like 7-Eleven, open 24 hours. Realized they had hits on like Donkey Kong the way they started out. First time all year that we were kind of on almost like a hot mess express.
Micah Nori, A Star is Born. I love him.
He was so ready for that. He was so ready. He's like, I got a bag of these. You ready? Bam, bam, bam.
Isn't that the truth? You could tell. You're so right, Claudia. He had these, and he had just, all he needed was an outlet. Yep. All he needed was a microphone in front of his face, and he got it. Boy, kudos to him. You know what? It sounds a little refreshing than what you normally get in a sideline interview.
It does.
You know what? I can say it's why letting assistants do this because, hey, Micah Nori's trying to make a name for himself, being on this bench for a great team now, I'm sure, hoping that opportunities come his way, and a little bit of added exposure that now comes last night, unfortunately, in a way that he wouldn't want, certainly. Yeah. But now seeing him step up, and he talked about it in the post-game press conference, and I think this is the most emblematic of this whole Timberwolves operation, is he said, hey, we all know our role. Our whole staff has an understanding of what they're supposed to do. We adjusted that a little bit when our head coach went out, and then we kept it moving. Here, we have just apparently found out that Micah Nori's role was to be the guy that had the funny quotes and funny similes ready to go for the halftime interviews. We got plenty more to get to on the NBA front. Still really need to talk about what went on in Philadelphia, and we will get to that. But coming up next, it's time for Mic'd Up Monday with some of the best sights and sounds from the 2024 NFL Draft this weekend here on GoJo Golic.
Monday here on GoJo and Golic, all of the best sounds from the weekend. But of course, this one is going to be an NFL draft edition. So up first, the Buffalo Bills didn't have a pick in the first round, so their first pick of the second round was Florida State receiver Keon Coleman. His first press conference ever, he got jokes.
Guess where I got this from, though? I'm saying you gotta guess. You're gonna be wrong, though, but guess.
Time is up.
Nah. Macy's. What you mean? They be on sale on the rack. All the colors. Look, $79, $89. Nice little deal. You can get the trench coat for like $100. Nice little. I'll take you there personally. I might go get some more colors. I need a blue one and another red one.
Got you. I'm with you.
There's good Thanksgiving sales too. That's what I usually do.
See, I ain't know nothing about Thanksgiving. I shop like my mom. I get my coats in the summertime. You gotta shop a season or two before, just in case, and they be cheaper. Cause you go at Thanksgiving, everybody in Thanksgiving, you know what I'm saying?
He also said that he goes to Waffle House so much that he has one of the cook's numbers pinned in his phone. So he's fun. I think Buffalo fans are happy to have him, Senior.
Oh, listen, if you're a fan of Waffle House, I'm a fan of you. I'll tell you that right out of the gate. But just to hear his whole explanation of the jacket and then talking about getting it 1 or 2 seasons ahead, especially out of season because it's on sale and less and cheaper. I loved it. I just love a great personality like that. I mean, we're not into football yet, and we're not talking X's and O's. He doesn't have to worry about that. He can just go off a little bit on that. That was excellent.
Shout out to friend of the program, Catherine Fitzgerald of the Buffalo News, I believe the one with that line of questioning that led to these beautiful moments with Keon Coleman. And Dad, you mentioned the personality. It was on full display, as was the boot in general, because between Keon Coleman and Brian Thomas, who made his impact, it was Brian Thomas was out here, but it was, I'm thinking country. Xavier Legette, the first round pick of the Carolina Panthers. That man, country as the day is long. So getting to know the South real well coming off this draft. And I love the fellas being themselves full front on the big stage right there. And prior preparation prevents poor performance. That's day one stuff from Keon Coleman as he gets ready to get cold for the first time since his time at Michigan State. Claudia, what do we got coming up next sound-wise?
Patriots, they did things. They checked boxes. We're pretty happy over here in New England. In the 4th round, they got some help for Drake May, receiver Javion Baker out of UCF. This, of course, was after bringing in Jalen Polk out of Washington. Baker was asked what he can tell us about his game. Just take a listen.
Hey, just come to the home stadium and bring out popcorn. That's all I can tell y'all. Bring your popcorn. I make people in wheelchairs stand up.
So yeah, GoJo. Oh. I don't really know about that one, but
the media training will eventually get to him on that one. Right now, that is the other part. Is I do think, Dad, I'm worried that as we get a class and more players that come from the NIL world in college, where you've got to grow up and be a business a lot earlier on, we're probably going to get a lot more media-trained answers early on as well. We'll see if there's enough Gen Z to balance that out in the world. If you get guys like Caleb Williams that are just so willing to be themselves, it doesn't matter. But this is probably going to be a dying breed, and so we should stop and savor when players coming fresh out of college give us mildly unhinged analogies to use.
You're right. I mean, listen, at all these workout places these players go to that you went to and Jake went to, I mean, you guys do media training there as well on how to answer questions. So, and you're just exposed to it a lot earlier. So I agree. The just off the wall quotes like that, I'll probably become far and few between as we get the more players who have done it a little bit more with a little more experience.
What do we got next, Claudia?
Yeah, media training needed. One of the coolest moments of the draft, I have to say, I did tear up at this one. Rams selected Florida State edge rusher Jared Verse with a 19th overall pick. Then on day 2, they traded up to get his teammate, one of his college teammates, defensive tackle Braden Fisk, and the phone call was special.
Hey, Jared, talk to your new teammate, Braden Fisk, man.
Hey, Fisk.
Let's go, boy.
Boy, you know what?
How about that? We got you two together.
Oh, I told you, man. Oh, my God, bro. Can't wait to play with you again. I can't believe it, man. Congratulations, bro. I'm so proud of you.
Oh, bro. I can't wait,
So
bro.
cool, bro, we gonna do this, man. We gonna do this. I'm so proud of you, man.
Oh,
Yeah, man.
oh that is awesome.
Something about big grown men crying really just gets me. So you guys talk about this because
draft day is the best for all that stuff. And I mean, I think that also reminds you too, like, Dad, not a lot of guys have a chance. You run into some guys that you played with in college and the next level, but you scatter like buckshot for the most part. And so it's a good reminder of how much work these guys all put in together and how much you talk about this stuff and dream about this stuff when you're players. And so now for these two, not only get to live it out together, but to be high picks, to be guys that are expected to come in and play pivotal roles, having someone there that you already know and trust to that level. I've always said to people in these jobs, it's hard for me to trust you the way that I trusted my teammates because that bond that you forge in the situations football provides you is just different. It's a different level of accountability and trust that you have to have with those guys. And so now they get to walk into the door with that person already in their corner in this new environment as they try and make their way as pros. It's awesome.
Yeah, first round, second round, Jared Verse 19 and Braden Fisk at number 39. Remember, a lot of people got to know Braden Fisk really probably for the first time if you weren't following Florida State or the ACC at the Combine with what he did, really showed out there. Gave teams a chance to go back and maybe look at more film on him, and certainly the Rams like what they saw. By the way, quickly on the Rams, in their third round pick Blake Corum to match up with Kyron Williams in the backfield. They did pretty well for themselves, no doubt about it. But Mike, this is also I think a microcosm of that conversation of what we talk about, you know, especially if you're getting as far as college and then in the NFL, because you spend so much time both in college and then in the NFL with players in the locker room. I mean, so much time in college even goes further to the classroom as well, but you become, you know, more than just teammates with a lot of players. And then the same thing happens in the NFL. I'm not saying everybody is buddy all the time. You walk out of there you can walk out with some really good friends. But if you ask, you know, players why they or what they missed most about the game. I've said this for years. Everybody misses game day. Game day is the cherry on top. Game day is what you work for. Game day is when you get to kind of put it all together. But that's just a small part of the team and what you do as a team. And I guarantee you 90% or more of the players, when you say, what are you going to miss most, they're going to say the locker room. They're going to say the fellas. They're going to say just being there. That was your family. So it was a very, very, very cool moment.
Well, you mentioned, too, college is so different. In the NFL, you get this full off season. In college, you're back for winter workouts and you're in class together. You're going through the spring football practice together. We'd get 2-3 weeks off at the end of the school year before we come back for summer school. I'd spent Thanksgiving with a friend of mine's family every year out there. Like you do, you see all the players out here way more than you see your family for that 4 to 5 year period, and the bond that it creates during that time where it's also like, hey, I got to physically sacrifice so my other friends don't get hurt, or I got to physically sacrifice with this guy and count on him so we can accomplish our goal and get to the place that we're looking to get here. I do think it creates a different level and a different bond, and you saw that on display with those guys there. Last one quick here I just want to get into here. The Chicago Bears, Caleb Williams, obviously the headline there. But Iowa punter Torrey Taylor also got his name called in the 4th round by this team, an absolute force in the punt game last year. Maybe the only thing that Iowa football fans had to look forward to watching that was even tacitly connected to offense in that program. And Caleb Williams made it very clear on draft day, there ain't going to be none of that funny business going on around here.
Caleb just texted me before saying, hey, you're not going to punt too much here, which is great. But that was pretty funny.
I also have to remind myself that all of these guys are Pro Kick Australia guys, and that we're going to have a whole generation of punters just teaching everybody about Bluey.
So true. Yeah, you don't see him anymore, all dropping the nose of the ball. Punting has certainly changed, and the biggest thing that changed has been the accents of the punters.
Unbelievable. So an incredible weekend of sound. Dad hates draft grades, but we're going to give them to you coming up in a little bit, right after we get to our all-weekend team from plenty of other big-time performance around the world of sports next.
GoJo and Golic. It's time for the weekend roundup, the best of the best from the weekend. GoJo, sir, I need your all-weekend team.
Yes, very excited to get to this one here. As always, we do honorable, not as always, sometimes we only do second and first team because we're lazy, but today we're doing honorable mention, second team, and first team because there's a lot that went on this weekend. And spoiler alert, I am wearing Notre Dame green for a reason, so y'all about to feel me right now as we get towards some late April, early May college lacrosse. But, Dad, in the meantime, honorable mention, we'll take a look at the NHL as the Rangers sweep the Capitals. They go and winning this last game 4-2, and it feels we talked about changing of the guard in the NBA, Dad, but Alexander Ovechkin held pointless for the first time in his career in a playoff series here. The 38-year-old who's coming off another season where on the pace he's at right now, he's going to pass Wayne Gretzky next year, and he's going to be in some all-time territory. He's already had a rich, full career, but unfortunately for a team that managed to get into the playoffs just by the hair on their chin, ushered to the door pretty quickly as another one of the aging stars in sport, finally maybe starting to show that him alone not going to be enough to just propel this team past where they got.
Yeah, and much like the NBA, we're seeing a bunch more than a few young stars who are very young, even being in the league for a few years. They've been in the league 4 or 5 years, but still unbelievably young. So it's a sport to seem to be in good hands with the youngsters out there. And quickly, New York's got to be real happy. Now you got Rangers moving on. You're probably going to have the Knicks moving on as well. Still teams to cheer about. Mm-hmm. Mine actually honorable mention has to do with New York as well. The New York Jets and their final pick of the draft, pick number 257, was actually the final pick of the draft. Mr. Irrelevant, Jalen Key from Alabama. Now, he spent most of his career at UAB, but finished up at Alabama because I don't really remember many Alabama players being the last pick of the draft, but there he is. There were a number of players picked in the last round or coming to the last round of Alabama. So what does he get? It's a nice trip to California that he's going to get. I know he gets a parade. He gets to go to Disneyland. I mean, they do a whole bunch of things for him. And remember, a couple of years ago, Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant, what he was able to do with the 49ers. But good for him. Pick number 257, gets himself some gifts, a nice parade, a trip to Disneyland. All is right with the world there.
Brock Purdy, how dare you put these kind of undue expectations on future Mr. Irrelevance now? You should be ashamed of yourself going out here and just resetting the bar completely, you animal. By the way, Cole Kubelik over at the SEC Network pointed out, Alabama with double-digit players drafted for the 6th time in the last 8 drafts. That is twice as many as any other school since 2017.
Ridiculous.
We'll see if that keeps up now as the Kalen DeBoer era begins there. Second team for me, Dad, goes for Rory McIlroy here, and it really is the team of Rory McIlroy and Shane Lowry. They win the Zurich Classic down in New Orleans. Fun team event. It's been a team event since 2017. Those two guys get it done, which is great. Love to see that for Rory, who we know has been struggling mentally a lot with everything that's gone on, beaten down by the Live war machine that continues to build up. But my favorite part of this, as we talk about, every highlight you see of Live is the rock concert. It's all the stuff around golf. It's guys wearing shorts and a bunch of loud music. Shane Lowry and Rory McIlroy, before they walked off the TPC Louisiana grounds, decided to walk onto stage, and there was a local cover band called Bag of Donuts, phenomenal cover band name, performing the post-tournament concert, and they got up there, and Rory McIlroy belted out Don't Stop Believin'. So maybe like a little subliminal nod to the fact that, hey, we have fun too, but it's nice to see Rory getting to let his hair down, have a little fun. Him and Shane Lowry, super close friends, so a great moment for them.
Yeah, that is very cool. More singing that we don't know if we really enjoy.
What if they got up there and sang What a Pro Wants?
Yeah, oh my God, that would be unbelievable. So I'm going to go, my second team is again, makes me feel old, is going to be sons following their fathers. And not only following their fathers, but following them to the teams they played for some of their career. Frank Gore Jr. Is now with the Buffalo Bills. And Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Is now with the Philadelphia Eagles. So that's just a very, very cool thing, not only to see, your kid rise up like that and going to get a shot, but sometimes in these cases, wearing the jerseys of where their dads went. It's a pretty cool moment for these families.
The Jeremiah Trotter one made me feel old because I grew up, I was a Morgan Eagles fan when I was growing up, and it was during that era of guys. And Jeremiah Trotter, certainly the heart and soul of that defense for so long, the Trotter hammer he'd swing down after big plays. Seeing his son and covering him in college already was surreal, but I have to imagine an incredibly cool moment for Jeremiah Trotter Sr. and that entire family to see his son now wearing that same Eagles green that he once donned back in the day. So really cool there. Obviously want to celebrate that. You gave out the great stat about fathers and sons last week, the fathers and sons of, former Pro Bowlers and the success they might go on to have. It's all great. I'm wearing the other green for a reason today for anyone watching on the DraftKings network, because over this weekend, my number one spot, first team all weekend, you guys know this whole segment has basically just become rapping for propaganda for Notre Dame lacrosse. Still the number one team in the land after knocking off 5th-ranked Virginia this weekend at Klockner on the road. Don't care. We'll see you again Friday. Smell ya. Regular season ACC champions. That's not even the cool part. The fact that I get to root for the unquestioned best team in the sport. The cool part, Dad, is Pat Cavanaugh now firmly cemented his place atop the all-time points leaderboard at Notre Dame. He had 4 points in the win, 2 goals, 2 assists, and set the all-time career record at Notre Dame now with 274. He passed Randy Colley's mark from the 1995 season that was set back in the 1995 season. And Dad, you and I were talking this weekend, the Cavanaugh family that started with Pat's brother Matt way back when I was finishing up school there, and now includes his younger brother Chris, who was on the team to help them lift the national championship trophy last year, could cement themselves as the most impactful family in Notre Dame sports history, pound for pound, considering what they have done to elevate this lacrosse program that was already great to one that now is national championship winner and should be the favorite to win it again. Pat should be the favorite to win the Tewaaraton, the college lacrosse Heisman this year as well, but an unbelievable performance from the program's best player.
I think it is a very fair question to ask, are they the most impactful family that has played at Notre Dame? You start to run through, obviously there have been families in football and basketball and all the sports. I would need to check check how many, if there were siblings that were fencers, because the fencing team has 13 national championships. So maybe you have siblings there. We would need to look that up. But if nothing else, the Cavanaughs are on the team picture, if not number one, as far as impactfulness in their sport at Notre Dame. So cool to see. I know you can't wait for the championship again. Notre Dame get there, you'll be there, probably with your shirt off like Jason Kelsey, drinking your butt off. So I know you'll look forward to that. But boy, we got to watch some of that team, some of that game as we were in New York to host a fundraiser. And by the way, watching a game with my son, a Notre Dame game with my son, is zero fun. Zero fun. He never shuts up, and he's really loud. I mean, and God forbid if we'd have lost that game, because there have been more than a few remotes thrown against the wall.
Yeah, no, I'm a nightmare during those games. I fully admit it. I'm the worst version of myself. Horrible. If you see me at Champ Weekend, just know I'm going to be drinking through this and yelling a lot, and I'm sorry in advance for everything that you and your families hear.
So my first team, Mike, is going to go to Candace Parker, who's retiring from basketball. And I mean, I don't have time enough to go through her resume of what she has done, right? But 2-time national champ, 2-time MVP of the tournament, 3-time WNBA champ, finals MVP, 2-time WNBA MVP. I mean, the list goes on and on. 3 gold medals as well. Go read the list somewhere of her contributions to the game of basketball are absolutely ridiculous. And she walks away to the game. She walks away from the game one of the greatest to ever do it.
Yeah, she's absolutely got claim in the GOAT conversation when you're talking about the greatest women's basketball player of all time.
Yes.
Now doing a great job as an analyst on Turner. She's been ubiquitous in basketball for so long. One of the biggest stars of any generation in sports, period, men's or women's. She broke so many barriers through her play and through her time there, and I'm sure is going to keep doing because we're not going to stop seeing her now. It seems like team ownership is something that she said is in the future for her in addition to being television. She said the Jay-Z line, "I'm not a businessman, I'm a business man." Congratulations to Candace.
lead over the Sixers last night with a 97-92 win in Philly. However, if you were watching, you might have guessed it was in New York because there were so many darn Knicks fans, and Joel Embiid was not happy about that.
Disappointed. I love our fans. Think it's unfortunate, and I'm not calling them out, but it is disappointing. Obviously, you got a lot of Knicks fans, and they're down the road and never seen it. And I've been here for 10 years. Kind of pisses me off, especially because Philly is considered a sports town. So, they've always shown up, and I don't think that should happen. It's not okay.
Well, it's also not okay to let Jalen Brunson score almost 50 points on you and put your team on the brink of elimination, but, whatever. Senior, is this fair for him to say? Is it the fans' fault at this point? And I'll actually say, I got heated when I was in college. I said the same thing. I asked Boeheim a question about the fact that the team lost. The team didn't play well, and he blamed it on the fans. And so I wrote about it, and I put that out there, and there was a quote. And Boeheim got so mad that I put out the words that he said. I'm like, you can't blame the fans. Your team is the one that lost the game. It is not the fans' fault. Am I wrong for that, Senior?
No, you're right for that. You can't do it. I mean, if you want, you lost the game. So the first thing y'all need to do is look in the mirror, whether you played a great game or had a big game or not. As a team, you lost. To sit there and say anything. That's all I would say. And listen, as Mike said, I played most of my career there. I heard plenty of boos from fans out there when we would lose, and my response had always, because that gets asked in Philadelphia, believe me, when you get booed now I didn't have many situations where it got loud. Now, the Giants did send a lot of fans down there when we would play them. And there were actually more fights in the stands than were on the field when we played the Giants. We were safer on the field. But never got louder by an opposing team like we see sometimes in the NFL and sometimes in Vegas or sometimes out in California. So that was an odd thing. But when you lose, Claudia, you're right. When you lose, you can't do it. You can't do it. If you're asked a question about the fans, you just got to say, listen, bottom line is we lost. So that's what we have to fix. Now, if you win a game, a close game, and your opponent's fans were cheering louder than your fans, but you won, maybe you get to say something then. But if you lose, Mike, you can't do it. It just sounds bad. Even though you don't like to hear it and you shouldn't hear it, but fans are allowed to do what they're allowed to do. And the Knicks fans showed up, so give them credit.
I was going to say, he's right, but you're never going to win against the mob. Like, that's the reality of the situation. It is embarrassing for a sports city like Philadelphia to have the Knicks completely overrun their arena in this way. Hell, as Notre Dame fans, we've got some familiarity with this. We've seen Nebraska come in and fill our stadium with red. Georgia did it when they made the trip up there. It is embarrassing, and you hate to see that from a fan or a player's perspective. But there was going to be no win. And the crazy part with me here is, Dad, this to me is a sign of how exhausted Joel Embiid is, because usually he has been the athlete that's understood how to be the Philly athlete better than most, meaning he understands the dynamic of the fan base. He understands usually the right things to say in these moments, but much like on the court, Dad, because the issue that you're seeing with Philadelphia is twofold. Is one, their bench gave him nothing, and we said that home games you're supposed to be able to count on your bench, and the fact that Trey McBride doubled up the Philadelphia bench production by himself. Not a great sign, not great, Bob. But the other part is, late in this game, Joel Embiid goes out in this game and has 27 points. And for the most part, was someone they could count on through the middle stretches of this game. But once again, the player whose conditioning is still ramping up, coming back from a lower body injury late in the season, looked gassed down the stretch. And when they decided not to take him out at all in the fourth quarter and just ride with him out there, you saw a 76ers team with an identity crisis. Because Joel was standing in the corner trying to catch his breath, and the rest of this team did not know how to function down the stretch. So when the Sixers came down on offense, everyone was looking for somebody else to make a play towards the end of that game. When the Knicks went down, even when Jalen Brunson, who passed Bernard King for the most points in a single postseason game in Knicks franchise history, down the stretch, even when he slowed down a little bit by the standard of the rest of his game, the Knicks still knew, hey, we're going to get the ball to him and something good's going to happen. We know who the adult in the room is on offense each and every possession for us, and it was Jalen Brunson. On the defensive end, Josh Hart selling out despite playing with 5 fouls, monster block down the stretch of this game. Really important performer for them. This Knicks team understands firmly their identity, and the 76ers outfit playing across from them looked lost in the back half of that game.
Yeah, you mentioned Hart, 17 rebounds in this one. Just 4 points, but he's for the defensive end. They only had 3 players in double digits, with Brunson leading the way, as you mentioned, with the record for the Knicks at 47. And you're right. You look at the 2 players who played, for New York, they had a few over 44. Brunson played 44 minutes. That's third most for the Knicks. Embiid played the most out of the 76ers. The man who is in probably the least amount of shape because of the injury played a minute more than Tyrese Maxey in this one. And you could tell. He just gets grind down. I mean, I get it. It's understandable. A guy that big coming off a lower body injury, I know it's been a while, but to be counted on and not taken out, not being able to give a rest and playing 40 minutes, you can't sustain that. And they're not sustaining that. They're gonna lose this series most likely. And then you have to go back to the drawing board and say, what are we going to do here? Because the first thing we have to do is cross our fingers that Joel Embiid can make it through the season and not get hurt once you start getting some lower body injuries, because even we know before he got hurt, he was right there for the MVP again. I mean, he's one of the baddest guys in the league. And I say baddest, I mean goodest. As we know, he is one of the best. But you got to worry about the big man injuries. Yes, I know, Claudia. Goodest is not a word.
No, I know. It's just funny to hear it. It's just. Let me ask you this.
Bad meaning bad, not bad meaning good.
Let me ask you this. Tomorrow, Knicks 4-point favorites at home against the Sixers. You got to lay 4, right? Come on.
Have to. Madison Square Garden is going to be an absolute madhouse. The other thing that this underlies, we talked about this from the Philly fan perspective, it's kind of cool to see the Knicks back. They have no idea how to act right now either. Just an absolute wild show of energy everywhere. But this is what this city has been crying out for years, Dad. We know they want to be a basketball town. And now they've actually got a team and a leader in Jalen Brunson, who is the steal of the league. Like the Dallas Mavericks have to, I mean, understandably, working with Luka and the performance that Kyrie put on last night, they're certainly not lacking for offense. But man, to let Jalen Brunson walk out the door, for the Knicks to get him for a comparative steal now, and to watch him become sort of what Jimmy Butler was to the Miami Heat. But we knew Jimmy Butler as a commodity going into that. We maybe just didn't believe that he could build it in Miami the way he has over the last run of years. Jalen Brunson has been that for this New York Knicks team that had a strong foundation, but now has a clear leader and someone they can count on in all these big moments. And so, MSG is going to be an absolute zoo, and I don't think there's any way they let the Sixers walk out of there with the win.
Yeah, I don't either. They've been relatively close games. They've been physical games as well. So this is a game on the side for the Knicks is you want to get this one done. You know you're going to win the series. What you don't want to do is have to play any extra games and possibly get somebody hurt. And the other is quickly take the wind out of the sails, right? This is, and it's not just Knicks 76ers. This is Team A, Team B. When a team's getting ready to knock somebody out on a gentleman's sweep, is get that big lead, take the wind out of their sails, let them start thinking about their vacation time. Some of these games have been tight games. This is the one where and so we would expect the same, but this is one where the Knicks would love to just jump out and try and knock them down and say, listen, you ain't coming back from it.
And I understand the easy retort from some people might be, hey, Jalen Brunson just had an all-time playoff performance. Like, surely we can't count on that each and every night. But you look around, the other players in doubles digits were Trey McBride, who's had a good series for them and obviously has the arrow going up, OG Anunoby. But then you look around, Isaiah Hartenstein had a bunch of foul trouble in this game. They had to finish with Precious Achonwa getting minutes. I mean, he hasn't been someone that Tibbs has enjoyed playing the majority of this season. And now he got in there because you already had the injury to Mitchell Robinson's ankle as a holdover from the last game. You mentioned Josh Hart, also just 4 points in this game, certainly made the impact defensively because that's a mature player who understands how to do that. But all this is to say, it's not like it was a banner night from the supporting cast that helped this out. And so now they go back home to the friendly confines there, and it seems like this one is over, and then we'll get to do the post-mortem where we do start to ask more questions, Dad, about what goes on with the 76ers and how you create some relief for Joel Embiid while still working with him as your centerpiece, if that's possible for you going forward. As we look back at the weekend that was also, Claudia, it's time for us to take a look at the NFL draft and start first and foremost with our pool results. Thank you to everybody who's followed the GoJo and Golic Twitter account and entered into our NFL draft pool on the DraftKings Sportsbook. What do we have in terms of results there?
Well, first of all, the amount of entries. So yes, doubling down on that, thank you, 37,381 entries, 66 people were perfect, 13 for 13, so they're going to split the $1,000 bet, bonus bet, I should say. Some correct answers. The over-under 9.5 offensive linemen was the line, went under. They got that right. 5.5 quarterbacks, they went over. Only 34% of entries, though, got that correct. They went over with 6. Notre Dame's running back, Audric Estime, to go over under draft position, 100 in the hook, so 101. He went 147th. 42% of folks got that right. So great job. That's very impressive how many entries. Even more impressive, though, that 66 of you were perfect. Speaking of winners, let's do a little draft soup relatives. I want to know both sides of it, because I think both sides are fun to hate on teams a little bit. So let's start with the winners, though. Gojo, who would you say won the draft? I have to say, how could you go anywhere other than Chicago in round 1? But I'm curious where you go with this one.
Yeah, listen, round 1 certainly defines a lot of it. And for Chicago, they only had 5 picks in the draft overall. So that was going to be the lion's share of it. They did draft one of the interesting guys we'll talk about in small school players in just a little bit, an offensive lineman coming out of Yale that's got a tremendous amount of promise there. They also brought in Torrey Taylor, as we mentioned. But, Dad, the Chicago Bears reset the foundation of their organization, I think much in the same way that the Houston Texans did last year. We know that's going to be the easy and apt comparison for a lot of people. But Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze walking into an offense that already seemed like it was making steps forward seems like it's hard to go away from them. I'd say maybe outside of that, the Arizona Cardinals do have a lot to be excited about. There's much more of a volume play in terms of going out and adding to their treasure trove in the draft as well. So I would say them, and maybe then throw in the Los Angeles Rams too, just a team that's got so much to be excited about on defense. We mentioned for them, you also bring in now Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, Blake Corum fits in perfectly in that backfield with Kyron Williams. They add a bunch of depth later in that round. Bo Limmer out of Arkansas, incredibly strong offensive lineman for some depth on the interior. Jordan Whittington, the wide receiver out of Texas, who in the sea of those great players, A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy, was the possession receiver you could count on a lot there. I think that there's a bunch to like about the draft for a Rams team that's going to be a really tough out this year.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned, obviously, Chicago, Arizona as well. You met Marvin Harrison Jr., Darius Robinson. They get the defensive lineman from Missouri. They got Trey Benson as well with pick 66, the fast running back from Florida State. I also think a team like Philadelphia, I think did pretty well for themselves as well. Getting Quinyon Mitchell. We're surprised that defensive players went in the middle of the draft, and then these cornerbacks didn't go till the 20. So they take care of those positions between him and Cooper DeJean from Iowa in the second round. I like what they did. So I think that was a step in the right direction for them. But the other ones you mentioned are basically who everybody thinks are the winners in this draft. And the difficult part is you're basically going off of, unless you really are diving in and know college football, you're really talking about when people look at this, the first couple of picks, because that's the names they know, right? Unlike, the people who are supposed to follow this, like a lot of the guys, you covered a lot of the guys. For the rest of it in the draft, it's a wait and see, right? It's certainly a wait and see for the top guys anyway, because we've seen players bust out at the top. But for fans of teams that see the 3rd through 7th round and some of the free agents are not going to know the names, that's where these drafts are going to be made. How do these guys contribute over the years? So that's always the fun thing to wait and see. And we never know. You can give a grade for the draft, but the real grade is going to be in a few years to see how many of these teams hit with these draft picks, especially the ones that you may have to pay big bucks to down the line.
All right, let's forecast a little more immediately then, and then look at our way too early offensive and defensive rookie of the year picks here. Now, those markets are up on DraftKings Sportsbook. Offensive rookie of the year, Caleb Williams, obviously not surprising to many people, the front runner at this at plus 200, followed by Marvin Harrison Jr. at plus 600, Jaden Daniels, JJ McCarthy, Malik Neighbors, Drake May, on and on down the list there, Dad. So if I'm asking you to pick right now, it seems to be kind of divided into two camps. It's either the receivers or the quarterbacks that you want to hang your hat on. I'll give you a position group to start off with. Which position group does the offensive rookie of the year come from?
Wide receiver. Especially with those three top guys, Harrison Jr., Neighbors, and then obviously Roma Dunze, who's going to be getting the ball thrown to him by Caleb Williams. I think they're both obviously big-time candidates for rookie of the year. But I will choose the receiving core. How about you?
I would say the receiving core too, just because I think Caleb Williams is probably going to be the only quarterback in a position to really have an offensive rookie of the year kind of season with the team. Washington still has a lot of holes in that roster they need to plug. The Patriots are certainly a ways away from, I think, being competitive, especially in that division. So I would say that I think Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray have a chance to make a really special connection out in the Valley of the Sun. I'm excited to watch that one a lot. Defensive rookie of the year, Dad, sort of the same problem of, hey, is it going to be D-line or cornerback right now? On DraftKings Sportsbook, Dallas Turner, the favorite at plus 400 with the Minnesota Vikings, followed by Laiatu Latu out of UCLA, and then Quinyon Mitchell, Jared Verse, Chop Robinson, Terrion Arnold, all the way down at sixth best odds at plus 1,300, tied with Chop Robinson and Byron Murphy. So what would you go, Dad, D-line or cornerback for this one?
I'm going to go cornerback, and this is an award that's going to be based on stats, right? I mean, that's what you do. The D-line, because you're looking for the sacks, and then the cornerbacks, you're looking for the interceptions. So we saw a nice grouping of cornerbacks last year, not as deep this year, especially early on. As we said, the top two went in the 20s, but I'm still going to lean toward that cornerback position.
I think I might go D-line. Just something about Latu, especially just coming in so pro ready to like hit the ground running on a defense that's got other guys up front that you can count on there. I ultimately think he's a guy that's just such a complete rusher right now. I'll give him the nod and thus the D-lineman the nod, which leads us to our most important category here, Dad. Best cut of beef from the draft here. And I would say shame on us at DraftKings Sportsbook for taking so far down in the offensive rookie of the year odds to get to the offensive lineman. The first offensive lineman, by the way, listed with odds for rookie of the year is Amarius Mims, the offensive tackle out of Georgia who went to the Cincinnati Bengals, listed at plus 30,000 in this draft. So, Dad, did you have a favorite offensive or defensive lineman from this draft that you were really excited to see come off the board, especially with the fit of the team they went to?
Well, I mean, I'm excited to see what Latu does. He was the first edge rusher to come off the board. The top guys, him and Turner, to see what they're going to do, because they're going to get their opportunities. Again, it's a position where you can start out. You don't have to be on the field for 70 plays, and they're not going to be. As an edge rusher, you can start out by going in and passing situations. You can move around. You can try some things, and then work in and play more time. Offensive linemen, most of the offensive line you mentioned, these are plug-and-play guys. This is a position just like quarterback. These offensive linemen, they get plucked in, and they don't move. They're there for 70, 80 plays or whatever you're going to run. And obviously I love Joe Alt going to the Chargers. But I'll tell you what, there's a kid that went 51 overall, Mike. You should love him. The center from West Virginia, Zach Frazier, is going to – so Pittsburgh got two linemen who they're going to plug and play. It actually picked up three linemen in the draft, but I like Frazier, the kid from West Virginia. You talk about picking for kind of the team you play for and what the personality of the team is. That's kind of Frazier. He's kind of that. And oh, by the way, if I remember correctly, state champion not once, not twice, not three times, but I believe 4 times in West Virginia high school wrestling. So that's pretty, as you know, I like the wrestlers, so it's pretty impressive to me.
Yeah, no, I figured that guy was going to be high on your board there. I would say that Mason McCormick, probably the most fun highlight reel to watch out of South Dakota State, an absolute human dump truck there. It does sort of, I think, kill my dream of Troy Fautanu getting kicked inside to play center, where I believe that he would basically be Marquise Pouncey reincarnate, but that's fine. We can let that dream die for another day, as beef certainly on the menu there. I actually, defensive side of the ball, I'm fascinated by the Byron Murphy to Seattle pick still. I think that's what we can talk about some of the later round guys as the season goes along, but he just fits the perfect archetype of what that interior defensive lineman and Mike McDonald's defense is supposed to be. His tape was some of my favorite to watch in the lead up to the draft, and now he gets to help kind of reset what Seattle's building on defense with that new regime. Coming up next, though, plenty of other news and notes from around the NFL as we got through draft weekend. We'll check in with the NFL's Ian Rapoport next. Welcome back to GoJo Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Claudia Bellafato. And for more of the news and notes around the NFL coming off of one of the biggest weekends of the sport, we're excited to welcome in NFL Network broadcaster and insider Ian Rapoport here on behalf of a very cool program that we can't wait to hear about, Wait Until 8th, that we certainly want to hear all about from you, Ian, in addition to the NFL news and notes. But we also know you're in a parking lot outside of your old high school right now. Explain to us what's going on here, and you also have a special gift that you're excited to show the class.
Oh my God. Yes. So I went to Hackley School in Westchester, New York, great private school. And they had me come back and talk to the school newspaper, just to, give a little talk about my career and how do you do it and tell some stories and give some advice. And I actually really enjoy this kind of thing. So I was happy to be able to do it. Work has gotten a little calmer. I mean, this morning was crazy with the Zeke news, but work has gotten a little calmer, so it's a good window to do it. So, yeah, 8:10 to 9:10, and I'm in the parking lot now. They gave me a nice tie. It's actually Vineyard Vines tie with the H for Hackley and the hornet on it. So it's actually a very lovely gift.
Holy smokes. That's nice.
Yeah, you guys are pretty jealous of that one, I bet.
I was going to say, Vineyard Vines, they didn't skimp on the gift there. I wasn't sure, high school kids, you're usually buying from like Joseph A. Bank or something. You're balling on a budget, so they knew you were coming in town, and they made sure that you were ready to go here. And I'd imagine that was a nice salve coming off of draft weekend where everything is fast and flying. You did mention, though, the Zeke Elliott news comes out this morning, heading back to Dallas with the Cowboys. How much do you think that informed the entire draft for the Cowboys, where everyone was so stunned? Hey, they talk about Jonathan Brooks, they mention this love for the running back, and ultimately walk out without one.
Well, so many things there. First of all, I got the sense probably 3 days ago that this deal was getting done. I mean, Zeke meets with them in person on Wednesday, and I'm like, and then I talked to his agent, I talked to Zeke, and the feeling was pretty positive. I'm like, all right, like, the deal wasn't done, but like, this is probably happening. And I kept thinking, like, I wonder if they're going to just try to get through the draft. And then Jerry Jones goes out and talks about, his love for Jonathan Brooks. And I'm like, nothing in the draft is by accident. I think everyone thinks, oh, there's Jerry again. Like, Jerry's unbelievably smart. My guess is he probably knew. He probably knew that they were signing Zeke. He probably knew that they weren't going to be able to take a running back, because I don't even think I think where they were picking, they would have missed the first couple anyway. So I think in his mind, it was like, let people know we're interested. Let someone else come up and get them, and let other good players fall to us. And then we'll sign Zeke after the draft. And I think that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I mean, so now it's Zeke, Rico Dowdle, and Deuce Vaughn in the backfield at Dallas. So I don't know if that's the trio that's going to be able to sustain through the year. Time will tell. We will see. I know we just had the draft, but current players as well. How much is it up in the air still, Ian, about the not one but two receivers in San Francisco with Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, as far as the odds of both of them actually being on that roster when the season starts?
Well, let's get to Deebo first, because I think a lot of people were like, oh, well, obviously, Deebo's not going anywhere. And then I think there was a report that they told him he's not going to be traded, but then teams are still calling. So I have a hard time imagining that the 49ers trade Deebo before the season. Like, anything's possible. And maybe he, gets real mad and wants to get traded. But like, they've done this before. He requested a trade before, and they ended up giving him a new contract. He's kind of the engine that makes that go on offense. I don't think they want to trade him. And I'll tell you this, if they do trade him, let's say it would be for like a third rounder next year. Like, are they going to wait a whole year to get any return on giving up their best offensive player? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Now, maybe if they get another player in return they could use, maybe, but like, why would not just keep your own player? So my sense now is Deebo probably stays. I think with Ayuk, I think they'd like to get a deal done. There's always angst before a deal happens. There's always frustration. It's never quite what you want. And that receiver market changed so quickly, because, I mean, honestly, even last week, you're like, all right, like, if you really think about it, you could sort of make the argument that, good receivers make, $22-23 million. Like, that's what Stephon Diggs is making. That's what Devonta Adams is making, all that. And then Devontae Smith gets done at 25. Amon-Ra St. Brown gets done at about 28 over the first 3 years. Like, that's the market. That's the market. So now the market has shifted, hopefully make it a little easier for the 49ers to get a deal done.
So maybe easier for the 49ers. I don't know how easy it's going to be for the Minnesota Vikings and Justin Jefferson, who seems like he's getting ready to smash all of those numbers. Where are they at right now with this? Ian, it's been a weird offseason for them. You let Kirk Cousins walk out the door, which I'm sure didn't make Justin Jefferson the happiest. They draft J.J. McCarthy now. So where are they at with their star wide receiver in this?
I think they're trying to get something done. Look, it's going to be a lot. Like, whatever it is, we can talk about all the different numbers. It's going to be a lot. There is a possibility, and look, he is a special player, so we can talk about him as a receiver, but I kind of wonder if it makes more sense to talk about him as a awesome player. Like, he makes whatever, highest paid non-quarterback would probably be something he's shooting for, right? Like, I believe now that's Nick Bosa, if I remember correctly. That's a lot of money, but he's so good that, like, you could literally tell me any price. It's like, it's always going to be a bargain because he's so good. So, get a deal done, pay him extremely high, move on and just say, you know what? We have a rookie quarterback and we can make this work, because that's the only way you really make those super mega contracts work, is if you have a rookie quarterback who's on a rookie deal.
What a happy rookie quarterback he's got to be. He's got Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, some nice receivers to throw to. It's a pretty cool thing. Just Ian, as a pretty cool thing is what you're doing with something called Wait Until 8th. Tell us about that. This is really intriguing.
Yeah, it's something that is, I think, pretty important to me, pretty important to my family, and something that is picking up steam locally for me, and I hope nationally, right? I mean, the idea is Wait Until 8th is essentially delaying the use of smartphones for kids in junior high, middle school, right? Because I think my kids have Apple Watches. It helps us keep track of them. And, if they go bike riding with their friends, it makes sure we don't get a heart attack. To me, that's different. Having a phone with no social media, to me is okay. It's the social media, it's the online aggression, hate, all the bad stuff. I mean, look, I live my life on my phone, and some of the stuff I see should not be seen for kids in 6th grade, 7th grade. I mean, it shouldn't be. There's a lot of social media that's not good, and I see it all. And so I feel like I'm the right person to hopefully take a stance and stand up and be like, as long as you can delay for your children, the use of smartphones, there's a pledge you can sign. It's a movement that is, I think, really growing, and I think important because, we all have to grow into everything. And to me, it's just, social media apps, there's a point when it's just too young. And I think delaying it as long as possible is probably good for everyone.
Yeah, I think we came up in a generation where we all kind of learned on the fly. Now we've got the benefit of time, seeing the effect all this can have, and hopefully can make better decisions like this going forward in the relationship that young people have with social media. Ian mentioned the pledge and where you can find out more information. That's waituntil8th.org. That's waituntil8th.org, where you can check all that out there. Ian, great stuff as always. We appreciate the time coming off a busy weekend here. Are you going to be wearing the tie? Can the kids at your high school expect your next NFL Network hit to be featuring the tie they gave you as a gift?
Actually, yes. And that's one of the great things. Like, if anyone wants to get me a tie, which people should, ties are great. I always throw them on. So I'm always having them on the network. It's a great way to show off a new gift. I have some good yellows, but this adds to my excellent crop of yellow ties.
All right, nice. There we go. They can feel good about this one coming to a TV screen near them. Ian, thanks so much, man. Have a good one.
All right, thanks guys. Ian. Appreciate it.
Dad, he threw that offer out there, and I'm sure somewhere Jim Nantz is salivating, thinking about giving somebody else a tie yet again in a situation where they'd actually wear it after the fact.
the Thunder rolled to a 3-0 series lead over the weekend over the Pelicans, who are still without Zion Williamson. 106-85 was the final. Inside the NBA is one of the best shows, I think, of all time, we can all say, and sports always entertaining. Charles Barkley had one of his better roasts of the Pelicans and the city of Galveston, Texas.
I'm disappointed in New Orleans. Where they going, Chuck?
Galveston. That dirty ass water. We're not even gonna send them to Cancun. We're gonna send them to Galveston where that dirty ass water be washing up on the shore. You people think they're in the beach. Y'all located, we gonna send y'all to Cancun. Y'all drive y'all quit. Drive your ass down to Galveston. Come on, man.
So they're taking a little.
Come on, they didn't even try, man. No, we're not getting them no plane ticket to the beach. We send their ass to Galveston, Texas, right where that dirty water washed up on the beach. They can't even get in the water. Come on, man.
Shaq's reaction just makes it 10 times better.
I was going to say, when Shaq and Chuck are aligned and not at each other's throats, where Shaq's reminding Charles that he never won a championship, that's when you know the magic's happening. And Dad, you've worked in television the longest of anyone here. And so you know exactly how this went, because you saw Shaq was smiling ear to ear at the start of this segment. Because clearly, they mentioned this during the break, and Shaq knew good and damn well, I know how to get Charles here. I just need to walk him right up to the door, and he'll walk through and do the rest. And now Galveston joins San Antonio, that caught a stray when they brought this up again, as one of the cities that Charles is probably going to have a hard time visiting from here on out.
Yeah, Chuck doesn't even have to go through a door. The door is already open for him, and he just walks right in. So who should feel worse, the city of Galveston or the women of San Antonio? Because they are the ones who take the direct shots from Charles. But Mike, did you see Barkley kind of walked it back a little bit, because you got to be careful who you tick off, right? And Beyonce's mom, Tina Knowles, is from Galveston, and she got sent that clip from her son-in-law, a guy named Jay-Z, and not too happy about it. And so Chuck is smart enough to not mess with the beehive. So he kind of backed off on that a little bit, didn't he?
I mean, he kind of did, and then immediately launched back into, they're like, oh, so would you go down to Galveston? And he said, hell no, and that's what he said. I would rather go back to the Riverwalk and hang in San Antonio, and went through that whole diatribe about the big old women. So I don't know if he really walked it. He tried to walk it back as much as Charles can, but then that man's unrelenting desire to just say whatever the hell he wants, because he's been handsomely paid to do so, took over again. So, and honestly, I tweeting about this as the rest of us were, because it was hilarious. And Shaq, when you hear the off-camera laughter, like when the producers in studio and the camera ops get caught on the mic, that's when you know you hit the magic, and that one happened here. But Dad, I even the people that I was tweeting with from Galveston or had familiarity with Galveston are like, well, he's not wrong. So this seems to be a little bit more. I don't have any experience with Galveston. I don't know if your time in the Texans you ever made, or the Oilers, excuse me, you ever made your way down to Galveston, but I have no familiarity with this place.
I have none either. And listen, Charles is one of the very, very few who can just basically get away with saying whatever, right? It's just, as they say, it's just Chuck being Chuck. But and you're right. There's no doubt that was discussed. And all Shaq had to do was walk over to the tee and set the baseball on the tee. And that was going to happen, because he just, Chuck needs to be set up, and then he takes care of the rest. It is gold. That show is gold. Absolutely. If you're looking for unbelievable X's and O breakdown all the time and straight basketball, which they do some of, you're on the wrong spot. You know, you're getting some basketball and you're getting entertained. And that's the world, man. And that is the show. And there has been nothing like it for a while.
It's why I love seeing like Candace Parker mixed in and the Tuesday crew, like her and Adam Lefkoe in there trying to be the straight man. Even Vince Carter here, who is filling in for Kenny the Jet Smith. is sitting there, and he's the one that had done the video board segments. Then he's sitting there trying to kind of like figure out where to go, while Ernie and the rest of them are just coasting and letting Chuck do his thing. I'd imagine that's how Claudia has to feel around here most days, as me and Dad are just mucking around through the slop, and she's trying to help us do a coherent sports show here. So Claudia, why don't you help us out and be the voice of reason in here as we get to some teams on the brink of elimination in the NBA playoffs?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know anything about Galveston, but what I do know is the Thunder are making serious statements here. 32 was the win margin in Game 2, 21 in Game 3, held the Pelicans to 92 or fewer points in all 3 games. So that leads us to cash it or trash it, because I just have to know if anybody can come back from these series being down. Cash it or trash it, presented by DraftKings. Stay tuned to hear everything DraftKings has to offer throughout the show. DraftKings, the crown is yours. So like I said, Pelicans, Thunder, we have Lakers, Nuggets, Sixers, Knicks, Bucks, Pacers, all of them on the brink of elimination. If you had to pick one team to cash to turn things around, GoJo, who would it be?
Oh, God.
Jeez.
I mean,
it's tough.
I guess technically technically the right answer would be the 76ers, just because they've at least got their star on the court. Like the Pelicans, all the scores you mentioned, once Zion got knocked out of the playoffs here, that became an uphill battle. For the Bucks, we don't know Giannis Antetokounmpo and his health, what the future's looking like this series. Dame Lillard also missed the other night, I believe, with an Achilles strain, which doesn't sound great. So I don't know what to count on from the Bucks. The Lakers are going up against the best team in the sport right now in the Denver Nuggets. And so that just the process of elimination, I would say the Sixers, but even that, I don't feel great about any of these teams being able to stave it off, Dad.
I don't feel great about any of them either. I mean, especially the Pelicans, Thunder. I mean, the first game was close, a 2-point game, and then 2 blowouts in this one. No way for the Lakers. Sixers, they have been games. I would probably say that, because with Milwaukee, Mike, I have no idea. I mean, Giannis has been out, and now Dame's been out. I have no idea who's going to be able to play. That game was actually closer than I thought it was going to be without those 2 in there. So I would actually give the Bucks a little bit of credit for that, but I'd probably lean towards Sixers as well.
I will say, of these 4 matchups, the Bucks actually have the shortest line, so they're only 3.5-point underdogs. So I don't know if that says maybe Dame will be healthy and he is playing. It's tomorrow, so we'll have to wait and see. Does that change your mind at all, GoJo or Senior?
Let me just say, I don't think any of these are coming back, but you asked which would be the best to have a chance. I would still say the Sixers, unless Milwaukee all of a sudden does get healthy. But I don't think any of these teams are coming back from their deficits now, Mike.
Trashing them all.
Yeah, I would say that too. And for the Pacers part of this, I think also, if you were going to look at that series, would be maybe the Pacers. We don't look at them as the best team of that bunch of names that we just brought out here. Again, the Denver Nuggets, the best team in basketball right now. You look at what we've seen from the New York Knicks and Jalen Brunson, even with the guys that we know aren't playing for them in this postseason run here. And, Indiana got an incredible Miles Turner performance out of this last game. They shot the lights out of the gym, too. That was the other thing. That game was a lot closer for a long time than it should have been, considering the Pacers shot 51% from beyond the arc and 51% from the field in this game, made 22 threes. They were lights out, and that was, to be clear, I get it. That was the offense that we saw the majority of the season for them. Slowed down a little bit late in the season, and in the postseason, we weren't sure how that was necessarily going to carry over. And a lot of that does go to the fact too, hey, yeah, the closeouts aren't going to be as good. Everything's going to struggle a little bit when all of a sudden you're down Giannis, Dame, and the usual guys in this rotation and have to go a little bit deeper into your bench, Dad.
The game tonight, and Claudia, I'll go to you, the Boston Celtics fan. I mean, what if the Heat pulls off another one down in Miami and they even this thing up at 2-2? How nervous are you going to be if that happens?
I will say it's not going to happen, and knock on all the wood. I think we let them have one. That was fine. They shot over 53% from the 3. That's not going to happen again. Yeah. I gave Spo the pep talk. I did that for them so they could get one. No, this line being 10.5 is right. I will say I've been betting the Celtics team total consistently throughout each game instead of laying these big points, which is something I like to do in basketball. The books somehow get it spot on, okay? So game 2, line was 111.5, made it by the hook. 106 in the hook, they dribbled it out with 1:30. I don't even know how that was, they didn't shoot. Oh, it drives me crazy. but they'll win.
You know what? The good news is at least the Celtics aren't going to be the one driving you crazy, as they likely are getting ready to head on to the next round. All right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. If you miss us there, catch the best of GoJo and Golic from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern on the radio wherever you hear VSiN. And if you miss any of that even, or our great guest, thank you to Harry Douglas, former NFL wide receiver, ESPN radio host, and draft analyst from this last weekend, stopping by to help us break down the Atlanta Falcons draft choices, and the NFL Network's Ian Rapoport for stopping by for some NFL news and notes, especially this wide receiver market that could be getting ready to pop off any day now. If you missed any of that, check it out wherever you get your podcasts or available right here as soon as we get done on YouTube. And guys, let's start off with this. One of the other images seared into my head off draft weekend had nothing to do with anything in Detroit or any of the teams there. No. It was David Tepper, the Carolina Panthers' very hands-on owner, apparently deciding to get hands-on with a patron at a restaurant. David Tepper drove by a sign at a Carolina restaurant called the Dilworth Neighborhood Grill that out front on one of those big message boards had written, "Please let the coach and GM pick this year," in reference to David Tepper being the one largely driving the wheel behind the Bryce Young acquisition last year at number 1 overall. And so Tepper did the very normal person thing and stopped in the restaurant to ask them who was responsible for this sign. Now, Dad, apparently the same restaurant had put up a sign last year in reference to David Tepper saying meddling owners never win, run from Jerry Jones, and Tepper had apparently not liked that one. But Dad, where are you at on this? I find this, which should be behavior way beneath someone of his stature. This is way too thin-skinned for someone with that bank account and this kind of control over the team, and reeks of someone who's been hearing a lot of what's been said about the way he's mishandled this situation so far.
Mike, isn't this the guy who poured a drink on a fan as well? I mean,
yeah,
come on.
It's on brand.
I mean, this guy, He's unbelievably thin-skinned, and in all honesty, he doesn't know how to own and run a team. He doesn't. So that sign was right. Let Canales and let Dan Morgan make the picks, because all you do is fire people too quickly and start the cycle over again. You have a history of that. It's not a one-time thing. Look in the mirror at why, if there's some failure going on here, but he can't accept that because he seems to be one of those guys, the more money he has, the smarter he thinks he is, and he's just not. I mean, the best thing to do is hire football people to take care of the football situations.
What this restaurant should do is put up a sign now that says Tepper soft. Like, just keep putting stuff up that's going to piss this guy off, because what is he going to do about it?
I mean, just keep going. You're right. At this point, that's the only option that you have here. And I think it's interesting because the people said that he was pretty cordial during this interaction for the most part, but we had the security cam footage where he took off the dude's hat because he was wearing an Eagles hat in the restaurant also. And I saw a lot of people commenting that anyone touching another man like that would be ground. Like, this is clearly someone in David Tepper who's never had his ass kicked in life, yada, yada, yada. If any of you would actually be the ones brave enough to swing on a billionaire with that kind of power who's displayed the kind of short temper that David Tepper's behaved, you're better than me, because that's one of those ones I think you got to assess the situation a little bit and understand hands might not be your best option in that situation. But none of this is advisable. This is a guy who was clearly trying to go in here and use his presence to sort of bully tactics here in a way that, hey, when you sign up to own the team, man, this is part of what comes with the territory. We talk about this from the athlete perspective all the time. It doesn't give you grounds to be inhumane in your criticism, but I also don't think this crossed any lines in terms of that. And so what we have instead is what Dad pointed out. Another item on the ledger of David Tepper going out here and responding poorly in his stint as the owner of the Carolina Panthers. So we've got that for this, and now it's time to get to this for that, Claudia, as we have got Nate Tice out here doing the Lord's sicko work ahead of the next upcoming 2025 NFL Draft.
Yeah, so his projections are very off from the odds over at DraftKings Sportsbook. Yes, the 2024 NFL Draft just ended, but we have the odds for next season. Colorado's Shedeur Sanders, even money to go number 1 overall. Georgia's Carson Beck at 3-1 behind him. Texas's Quinn Ewers at 3-1 as well. And then Penn State's Drew Aller at plus 850. But GoJo, you were saying Sanders is nowhere to be found on his list?
Yeah, so Nate Tice, great, football analyst over at The Athletic and Yahoo Sports. We've had on the show here plenty. He put out his top 25 big board. And yeah, the first quarterback off on the big board here, and there are only 2 that he lists inside the first round. Former Duke quarterback, now Notre Dame quarterback, Riley Leonard. Nate knows ball. He's got him and Carson Beck as the quarterbacks there. Shedeur Sanders, not in his top 25 list of prospects, Dad, that skews very heavily, pun fully intended, towards beef at the top of this draft. Not 1, but 2 of the LSU offensive tackles inside the first round, led by Will Campbell, who's second on his board.
So, yeah, again, this is his top 25 prospects, not obviously draft order. You have to wait to see what the team's needs are. You go ahead and talk about the beef. Sure, why not? I'm going to talk about the fact that his first 12 prospects are on the defensive side of the ball and 3 on the offense. The 3 on the offense, by the way, are offensive tackles. All the others are basically edge rushers and cornerbacks. Because as we saw, edge rushers go down a little bit, cornerbacks not go till the 20s, but he seems to think that would be a little more full in those 2 classes, in those 2 positions for this year's draft. We'll wait and see, but I thought it was surprising that Shedeur Sanders, we all, were kind of putting him, Quinn Ewers, we didn't see Quinn Ewers in there as well, that those 2 would be talked about as the top 2 quarterbacks coming out. So we'll have to wait and see what's said about that.
For Notre Dame fans wondering, Benjamin Morrison, 12th on Nate's big board right now, the all-everything corner in South Bend. I did think it was interesting.
Stud.
People are going to focus on Shedeur Sanders because odds books have him as the favorite for the number 1 overall pick right now, which I agree is way too rich for my taste. I think the even more interesting one is that in Nate's top 25, Travis Hunter isn't the first or second defensive back off the board. The two-way star player for Colorado that obviously dealt with some injury this last year. But you look, Will Johnson, the cornerback out of Michigan, long and strong there, the first DB off the board. And then he actually has Malachi Starks, the safety out of Georgia, as the next best player in the secondary out there before you get to Travis Hunter as his 11th best prospect in this class. So very interesting read for a Colorado team and a couple of players that got a lot of fanfare there. And Nate, a card-carrying sicko. I appreciate it. There's some studs on this list, by the way. Michael Williams is the player the defensive end, the edge rusher out of Georgia that he has as the number 1 overall prospect and kind of the same book as a lot of the other recent number 1 or top overall picks out of Georgia. It's about the tools, not necessarily the stats that we've seen right now.
Stats, right.
Let's get to the third. That being said, Claudia, no stats, just vibes here from the Minnesota Twins, who have taken celebrations to a very beefy new height.
No stats, just sausage. The Twins are on a 7-game win streak, and they're not going to be getting rid of a sausage anytime soon because of it. Let me explain. So infielder Kyle Farmer left a sausage on the table in the clubhouse. So the hitting coach brought it into the dugout last week when they were facing the White Sox. Keep in mind, the White Sox. So the Twins ended up sweeping them in the 4-game set, scored 25 runs in the series. And they're saying it's because of the sausage in the dugout. Not because the White Sox are one of the worst teams in baseball. Not because they have a 5.10 team ERA. No, it's because of the sausage. So now they use it. They touch it before they go up at bat. They use it in their home run celebration. Dudes being dudes, I guess. They're a little stitious. It's a fun story, but they need to get rid of that because I don't think that'll last long.
I think, Mike, that as long as they're successful, it's going to be a sausage fest.
Oh,
there we go. He's been waiting all morning for it, folks. That man held the dad joke of the day in for 2 hours almost before finally letting it out here. I'm proud of your restraint. I can't say I'm surprised by any of this, and I actually, it's a joke that I was probably going to make if you didn't. So thank you for being the one to fall on that sword. I did. Rocco Baldelli, their manager, did underscore, I think the one big concern here is this is sausage inside one of those sealed plastic casing. And they're throwing this thing around. Like I saw a celebration the other day, guys coming over to the dugout, and it's getting tossed. Eventually, the casing is going to be compromised. And when that happens, there is going to be some spillage. There's going to be a lot of juice in there. I'd imagine everything is going to hell inside that casing because, like Claudia said, it is out there, it is in the sun, and it is not being cooked or refrigerated properly as the instructions would mandate. So, Minnesota playing a dangerous game. That being said, I can't help but support it. You're always going to have us on your side when you've got beef on your side. So welcome to the Minnesota Sausage Party. We are excited to join you guys for this journey and see how far you can take this particular link here. We're excited to see how much of this show you can take each and every day. If you do enjoy it, as always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, and leave us that 5-star rating. Thank you guys so much. We'll talk to you tomorrow.